All right, minute after the hour, and I'm sure we'll get some more as people are able to log on, but I want to keep everybody on schedule, so I will get started. Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending. I am Chris Gibbons, president of American Green Consulting, the premier COC certification consulting and support organization in North America. American Green supports companies of all sizes, from single-member LLCs to multi-site and group certificates numbering in the hundreds of locations. This is the third webinar of our certification series. For today, we have Jess Gillen, our Administrative Services Manager, back helming the webinar. More importantly, for those who were on the last webinar, we don't have my toddler son trying to help me helm the webinar. And our marketing team of Kendra and Nick are determined to turn me into a public speaker, so I promised I will not stray off script. Third time is the charm, right? For today's webinar, we will be reviewing common corrective actions, or CARs, that come up in chain of custody audits. Much of the data supporting this webinar comes from FSC audits, but there is significant overlap with SFI and PEFC audits as well, and I will do my best to note that when appropriate. And of course, I will briefly mention AGC services that can help you avoid CARs in the first place, should you choose to go that route. There will be a question and answer at the end, so if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A section on your screen, not in the chat. If you have any technical issues, you are welcome to private message Jess through that chat feature. And after our webinar, you'll receive a survey. We do ask you to take a moment to complete it. This will help guide our future webinars and ensure we're providing information targeted to the audience we have participating. All right, today we will be discussing the following topics: red flags to certification bodies, a review of corrective action data, and simple fixes for the most common corrective actions. Chain of custody certification should be simple. Where does your material come from? Are you capable of not losing that material? And can you get it to the right customer? Unfortunately, that simplicity can get lost in the myriad of certification-specific requirements, and it is human nature that once we decide something is too hard, it magically becomes that. It is from this magical area, after annoyance and before perseverance, that most CARs originate. Let's start with certification body red flags. Every auditor is a little different, but there are a few universal red flags that cause most auditors to think to themselves, you know what, I'm going to give these folks a real hard look today. The first flag is not updating your primary contact with your certification body when that person changes. Whenever someone leaves a company, there are plenty of things that were quote unquote on their plate that get shuffled to the side. Chain of custody certification often makes that list as more pressing responsibilities get divvied out. However, in many companies, the primary FSC contact has their finger in every aspect of a COC program. Taking the time to pick someone to hand off records and responsibility to, and letting the CB know that that person has changed, keeps the entire audit process, right from initial contact for scheduling, from starting off on the wrong foot. Second to that, and often connected, is being unable to provide the auditor even the most basic documents, such as your certification procedures and product group list, prior to the audit. If the person who is ostensibly in charge of the certification program at your company doesn't even know where their certification documents reside, that doesn't bode well for audit day. And the last is not understanding the simple concepts of certification, such as what a certification claim is, knowing your certification code, or what documents are involved in your certification. Now let's talk about CARs. Some CBs instead call them non-conformities, or NCRs, same exact thing. Whether CAR or NCR, both have major and minor status. Major CARs have a shortened timeline for closure and tend to be systemic issues or repeat issues over time. Minor CARs are everything else that is missing or an error. You may also see something called an observation. This is something the auditor wants you to be aware of, but doesn't rise to the level of being a non-conformity. Observations aren't the topic of today because they don't have deadlines, they don't impact your certificate, but they can be useful, so don't skip them. American Green conducts roughly 250 internal audits of group and multi-site certificates per year. Our internal audit system is crafted after the audit system that certification bodies have, in part to help our clients grow comfortable with what they will see when an external CV auditor comes in. So the following list is drawn from our own internal data, but also data that's been collected through our certification body contacts. These are the top 5 most issued cars in 2021 and 2022 in order. Number 1, seller's invoice and shipping documents. Number 2, trademark submissions. Number 3, AAF supporting documents. Number 4, material accounting records or volume summaries. And number 5, training. Out of 50 plus possible cars in the standard and 33 separate types of cars that were issued by American Green auditors, these 5 cars account for almost 60% of all cars issued. It is interesting to note that 2 of these 5 are FSC weighted, namely trademark submissions and AAF related documents. If we were to remove these 2 and aggregate across all standards, then supplier invoice and shipping documents and just general documentation issues would join the list. General documentation issues can range from not having an up-to-date or feasible product group list, again an FSC specific issue, but a good example, to not providing proof of supplier verifications, all the way to not providing an operations manual. Operations manuals are also called document control systems in some companies. You remember slide 3 in those red flags though? This car would be attached to that. Number 1 car, accounting for 15% of all issued internal cars over the last 2 years, are errors on outgoing invoices and or shipping documents. The literal last customer-facing step of the entire process, and it is the most missed or messed up. The most common error is simply not putting the information on the invoice. Certification code and material claim need to be there. Putting the wrong claim on the invoice is another common issue. For example, putting FSC mixed credit claim on an FSC recycled credit product. Then, well down the list is putting the wrong code, often putting your supplier's code or trademark license code instead of your certification code on the document. The simplest fix is to automate. Even the smallest companies these days usually operate with some form of electric record keeping, and very few software programs allow for no customization. So program it in. Create an FSC, SFI, or PFC SKU or product code that can pull the code and claim forward every time you sell that SKU. Or maybe just have it pull the code and trigger a required field for the claim if you don't always get the same claim on a given product. Just make it something that doesn't have to be remembered in order to do it. Second are trademark issues. This is almost exclusively an issue with FSC certification. SFI especially has a fairly simplistic trademark approval system. FSC though is overly complex. Side note here, watch for our upcoming webinar on the most common FSC trademark errors, which will be headlined by Jess, our Administrative Services Manager / Webinar Master / FSC Trademark Guru. There is no simple fix for trademarks, unfortunately. Train your staff, have supporting collateral, and give yourself plenty of time for approvals, and you'll get 90% of the way there. The other 10% of the time, you will just bang your head against the wall in frustration. But if you don't at least follow the most basic rule of getting a trademark approval before usage, you're setting yourself up for an easy car during your audit. And when you get a car, it always falls on you, the certificate holder. American Green covers trademark usage in our training portal. We've created cheat sheets, common error sheets, and provide one-on-one support when our clients reach out to us and this still ends up being the second most commonly issued car. You can probably hear my frustration with the FSC trademark system seeping out, but until they put me in charge, that's what we have. So there is strength in numbers though, and that frustrating 10% of the time can at least be eased by knowing you'll have someone there in your corner with you. American Green has won some and lost some, but know that AGC will always go to bat for you. Number 3 is solely FSC specific. There is no comparable system to the FSC AAF and SFI and PFC. And prior to 2021, this car was a non-issue. But then FSC updated their annual accreditation fee policy, and the changes were anything but minor. Previously, there were 10 categories that covered companies from $0 in revenue to above $1 billion. The CH or certificate holder simply picked their proper category, and the auditor accepted that unless it made no sense. I think of 200-person company claiming $1 million in sales. That kind of no sense. In the new policy, FSC requires calculations down to the closest million in revenue and documents to support that figure. Now, the ostensible reason for reconfiguring the entire AAF system is to bring fairness and parity to the fee structure. And in FSC's defense, it does do that. As an example of the prior policy, a $100 million company would pay the same as a $499 million company, and a $500 million company would pay significantly more than a $499 million one. Not fair for the $100 million company, and a deal for the $499 one. Under the new policy, a $100 million company pays a little bit more than a $99 million company and a little bit less than a $101 million company. But that's not really the issue. If FSC had stayed with the same self-reporting as previously, only asking for confirmation on self-reporting that seems silly, then there would be no cars, no concerns, and little loss of certificate holders due to this change. But of course, they did not do that. Instead, they came out with somewhat onerous requirements for CHs to prove the revenue. Examples include full profit and loss statements or copies of IRS tax records. FSC will say they listed these only as examples, and there are plenty of ways to meet this requirement. However, I will condense 20 years of the same issue down to this. The auditing arm of FSC, ASI, or Assurance Services International, tends to treat FSC's, quote, examples as required. The CBs know this, so they craft exceptionally strict systems of auditing in order to try to please ASI, and then a whole bunch of certificate holders quit and everyone backs away from the precipice after a year or two and things settle back to a reasonable auditing level. Our expectation in American Green is that we'll see this cycle complete itself after 2023 audits are done. In the meantime, our suggestion is to only show the auditor what you want them to see and tell them if that isn't enough, they are free to write the car. Then contact us, complain to the CB and or FSC directly, but make sure you share your concerns about this issue to someone in the FSC system in an explicit manner. All right, let me take a moment to tell you about what American Green offers, and then we'll finish up with the last couple of cars we want to talk about. American Green has services that can meet the needs of any company of any size, whether you're a company doing less than $5 million in gross annual wood product sales, looking to join one of our print paper or wood product group certificates, a multi-billion-dollar company who needs our full service multi-site management plan, or anybody in between, we can assist. In addition to our group and multi-site management services, we also have our online chain of custody portal and our certification kits. Whether answering a few simple questions through our portal or filling in a few blanks in one of our documentation kits, we have an affordable and well-supported do-it-yourself option for any certificate holder. And every single one of these services is designed to make your certification life easier, including helping with the issues we're talking about today, and all covered by our American Green Guarantee, which Jess will paste into chat. And of course, we support PFC and SFI COC too. All right, we're almost done. 2 to go. Material account records and volume summaries. Number 4. What did you buy? What did you sell? And can you show that the two are connected in an understandable and non-fraudulent fashion? Pretty simple, but also boring and tedious. So everyone ignores it until just a few days before their audit, and runs around like a chicken with their head cut off, trying to get the information they need. And shocking absolutely no one, mistakes are made often. The fix is simple. One, if you can, program some reports into your software system so that you can just leisurely push a button and have everything pop out, formatted, correct, and easily emailed. If that isn't an option, just keep your spreadsheet up throughout the year. An hour once a month is much easier than 25 hours of rushing around just before you're on it. Last on the list is training. The standards say that people have to be trained often enough to maintain competence in their part of the chain of custody. My strong recommendation is to have that written in your documentation as is, but enforce an annual training. The fact of the matter is that for many certificate holders, FSC jobs, certified jobs are few and far between. If your last certified job was 6 months ago and the last time you actually looked at your procedures was 3 years ago, there's a good chance that both that last job and this one will have errors. Even for people who do certified work day in and day out, that memory can fade. A training system just needs to be effective and implemented, but if you're interested in being simple and accessible and efficient too, our AGC training portal provides short videos, an average of 6 minutes, on every aspect of FSC chain of custody that you can watch on your own schedule 24/7. You even get a lovely certificate after each one that you can use as your training record, and we do offer the videos in Spanish. SFI videos should be added by the end of this year too. All right, we've covered a lot today, and I have promised you the simplest and easiest fix to almost every car out there. That fix has 2 parts. One, take the time now to automate what you can. A day of work now that saves you a week of struggle year after year is worth it every time. And 2, don't delay yourself into having to rush. Carve out time every month to stay on top of things, or minimally look over your systems, purchases, sales, a couple of months before your audit instead of a couple of weeks or days before. And that's it. Companies that do those 2 things will have few to no cars. Those that don't will. All right, now I'll answer any questions that have come up in the Q&A box during this presentation. Please give Jess and I a moment to bring them up and sort them. Type them in now if you'd like. Feel free to refill your water glass. We'll get started in just a moment. Just a note, we will answer all the questions sent to us. If yours doesn't get answered live here, we'll make sure you get an email response after we conclude. I will be back in moments. Well, no questions coming in, but I will give it a moment longer in case people are typing, and then we'll finish up. About 2 minutes. Well, nothing coming in, so this webinar was designed to be fast and simple, just like American Green Services, and I guess we're getting that. Thank you all for coming today. I sincerely appreciate it. Look for the webinar to be posted to our website shortly. Jess will put the link in chat. And since American Green specializes in reducing your COC pressures, I won't pressure you to have a good day. I'll just say have the day you have. And I hope it's a good one.